And then I'll close it down so we don't have an echo here.
Okay.
All right, we should be. All right, we should be good to go.
All right. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the special meeting tonight on June 24th, 2021 for the School District of Belleville. We'll call this meeting to order now at 6:30 p.m. Marion, if you could do a roll call vote, please. Roll call, please.
Trevor,
Here.
Ryan,
Ryan, can you hear us?
you're muted, Ryan.
I lost my screen there. Sorry. I'm here.
Barb Peterson.
Here.
Jill. Here. Bill.
Here.
Mike.
Here.
Marion. 7 present.
All right, very good. Thanks, Marianne. Next up, if I could have a motion for agenda approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right. There a
Second.
second? A second by who? I'm sorry.
Bill.
Okay, I've got a first by Jill, a second by Bill, and then Marion. I'm sorry. Goodness gracious. All in favor say yes.
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 Any no? All right, I just hit a button on my screen. Bear with me just a moment. All right, sorry about that. All right, first up this evening would be a staffing update.
Typically, this would be in the consent agenda, but without a consent agenda this evening, we do have one resignation from a special education teacher at the elementary school. And then we also have a recommendation to hire a new speech and language pathologist, someone that has a few years of experience from the Baraboo School District, and then quite a bit of experience before that as a nurse. So we are happy to be adding this individual to the staff. Becca Johnson and I have met with her multiple times, and I know she's even had a couple of questions for Kelly. So those are the two that we have, one resignation and one appointment tonight.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Nate. So with that, are there any questions about the resignation or the appointment?
Nate, do you anticipate any other resignations?
No, not at this time. I have gotten, in talking with the principals, we have gotten one other previous call, but this was weeks ago. I think we would have heard by now if that staff member had gotten the job. So without being too specific, I'm not anticipating any coming up. No.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. If there's no other questions or discussion, is there a motion for the resignation?
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Carrie Evanson effective June 17th, 2021.
Seconded.
All right. I got a first by Ryan and a second. Sorry.
Mike.
By Mike. Thank you. And then Marion, if you could, a roll call vote, please.
Trevor,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Barb,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Marion. Yes.
All right. Motion passes 7-0 then. And then is there a motion to accept the appointment?
I'll make a motion to accept the appointment of Sarah Downey as speech pathologist for the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll second it.
Okay, a first by Ryan, a second by Marion. And again, Marion, please a roll call vote.
Trevor,
Yes?
Ryan,
Yes.
Barb,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Marion. Yes, 7 in favor.
All right, motion passes. That takes care of the first agenda item. Then the next one this evening, moving on, would be an amendment to the earlier motion for the purchase of a new bus.
So last Monday, you heard from Janan Kosak, our Director of Transportation. At that point in time, we believed that the new bus purchase would be $95,000 or under. When we got the quote back from Nelson Bus Service, it was higher than that, just under $98,000. Recall that we do not intend to buy a brand new bus at that price unless we can secure the clean diesel grant, which will take 25% off of that price. If the clean diesel grant does not go through, then Janan's plan would be to come back to the board in August and propose a used bus, most likely from Nelson. That would be something that would be low miles, but on the lot. That way we would be able to have that for too far into the school year. If we order a bus, this new bus with clean diesel grant, again, we would expect delivery by about February. In either situation, we don't want to do too many repairs on the buses that we have, spending good money after bad, knowing that their life is not too much longer in them. So Ryan had made the motion last Monday. Marion had seconded it. If they are okay with making that change to go back up from 95,000 to 98,000, we can meet the Nelson quote if we again get the clean diesel grant.
Are we sure 98 is going to be high enough? I mean, do we want to go 100 and just give ourselves some leeway, or?
I did double check with Janan just yesterday. She's fine at 98. That would include the storage that we had talked about. It provides storage, undercarriage storage, and that's what the additional cost would be. Remember the last bus that we bought outright, I believe, was in the high 80 range, I believe about $89,000. And again, every about third bus we buy, we want to have that undercarriage storage, not only for sports like football, but also sometimes field trips, things like that, where we're bringing along equipment, those sorts of things. It does help in that kind of situation too. Good question though, Ryan.
All right.
You probably don't know.
Well-
You probably don't know the answer to this one, Nate. Just out of curiosity, would this be the first bus for us then that's running the DEF fluid for clean air exhaust?
Yeah, I do not know the answer to that one.
It doesn't change anything. I was just curious. Okay, so yeah, if there is there any other discussion on this topic for the evening? If not, is there a motion to support? Ryan?
I would like to amend my motion from June 14th to approve the purchase of Thomas Bus at a maximum price of $98,000 from Nelson Bus Service, Inc.
Is there a second? Was that you, Marion, for a second?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We got a first by Ryan, a second by Marion. Then if you could please, Marion, a roll call vote, please.
Trevor,
Yes?
Ryan,
Yes.
Barb,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Marion. Yes, 7 in favor.
All right. Very good. Motion passes. Then the last item on the agenda this evening would be the follow-up information that the board asked for from Nate for the JEDI virtual school option. And I think Nate spent some time following up, and I was kind of glad to see some of the information that he was able to attain, and just the outreach that he was able to do to some of the families that we may have never reached out to before.
And I would like to say to the board, thank you for doing your due diligence, and I'll talk about some specific requests that I had that we fulfilled, that I think we're going to have a much more informed decision tonight than we would have about a week and a half ago. The first is we did not have accurate pricing last Monday. We had not been given the 2021-22 pricing from JEDI. That is available to the board now, and it is what Jamie Sivrud from CISA 2, the JEDI Virtual School Coordinator, had discussed on a sliding scale. So it would be $7,000 per year, but it's still a 3-year contract, $21,000 total. That would be a little different from the $25,000 or so that we had talked about last Monday night. That being said, especially with the unknown in the state budget, that is quite a bit of money, and we want to make sure that it's going to good use. First, let me just talk a little bit about the homeschool families that I reached out to. Again, there are 45 in the district. This was at the start of last year, those that were in the Homer system, 45 in our district. Not that quite that many families. Some have obviously more than one child. But when I reached out to them, there was some mild interest on the part of about 4 families. And when I say mild, it was, I'm interested in learning more. Certainly not a declaration that they are ready to sign up, come into the district and be one of our students to go and take classes with JEDI. We do have, out of the homeschool calls that were made, one family that has definite interest for next year. But beyond that, again, no commitment. So far, if you're keeping track, one definitive, yes, we're very interested for next year out of the homeschooled families. I had a conversation, and I want to give credit to Barb on this one. Barb had called after our meeting last Monday and said, basically, you know, I'd like to be able to vote for what the administrative team had brought to us, but I'd like to have, you know, follow up from even those, our own parents. Are they still interested in this option? That survey that went out was in May. In fact, really mid-May, May 11th. But even in that time, things have definitely changed in opinions. So when I reached out to those parents that had shown some initial interest in JEDI, and those again are our own parents with our students that are already in the district. Of those, remember we thought we had about 18 or so that had shown some interest, and some beyond next year. We only have now 4 of those families, 6 total students that have now showing what I would characterize as some interest. Again, out of that group, no definitive, we really want this for next year, or we're going to go elsewhere to find that. The responses, and I didn't include that for the board, the responses that I had received are, of those that are still interested, a lack of commitment until they know what the fall is going to look like. So a common theme in those calls were, I'd like to see what happens with the variant. I want to know what might be happening with vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds. I'd like to see our local numbers once we get to that point. We won't be able to make a decision in August. So I would say a secondary thing, even within that group, was ultimately we'd like to be back in the district, but I'm not willing to commit right now on JEDI because I want to see what it looks like. So in all of this, I can only say that we have one definitive person that would, or student that we would have, that would be for next year. I can't make any guarantees beyond next year. That would be 22, 23 and out. So things have definitely changed. You saw in some of my notes that their experiences near the end of the year and now even into summer school have changed some minds on what they see for next year. I don't anticipate us losing the many students out for this. And part of the communication that would come out from the administrative team is we still do have some options. There's fewer options at the elementary school, but we still have some options. We have an online curriculum called Edmentum. And what Admentum is their online classes. It's just that one of our teachers has to be the teacher of record on that, and we monitor that. We also can still get, as we always have, Wisconsin virtual school classes for middle and high school students. And again, that's not a year-to-year or 3-year commitment. That's something that we can do as needed basis. And oftentimes we start with a course and see if the students can handle it and like it before we add other courses there. So although I had provided the board with some more specific information about how much actual funding comes in and out with open enrollment for those students coming into the district and those students going out of the district, my opinion has certainly changed with these follow-up calls. I don't see, again, I think to Barb's point last Monday night, I don't see the demand that would necessitate a $21,000 investment over 3 years. And again, no option to opt out after year 1 if we no longer have any students with that. So again, I want to thank the board for doing due diligence and tasking the administrative team with this, because one, I think we did make some outreach to homeschool families that had never been called before, that know that they're out there. Had some conversations about timing when they might want to come back into the district, specifically for upper level math classes, for lab science classes, and then potentially for high school. And then again, to follow up with those parents that initially showed some interest to see, are you really ready to do this before the district commits for 3 years? So I don't know if the board has questions, but I had talked to the administrative team this morning, and they understand that what we initially thought was really a strong desire on the part of our parents is no longer there. And I think you can attribute that to how the end of the school year went. And again, I think the first few weeks of summer school as well.
Yeah. Nate, have there been any cases or anything yet in summer school with COVID related?
No, in fact, I was showing some of our more recent data, whether it was to the administrative team or the district office. So one of the pieces that the Department of Health Services still monitors is our school district data as a whole. So that's not just our students, it's anybody that lives within the confines of our physical geography of our school district. And there has not been a case, I'll just double check here, there's not been a positive case reported in the school district itself since May 26th. So we're almost at a month out from any positive case in the school district that's been reported to DHS.
Wow, that's great.
I want to thank you, Nate, for contacting the homeschool families, because I think that's, just to have that contact with them for any future information that we're wanting. I think that contact was great. So thank you for doing that.
You're certainly welcome. And again, I think that's something that we may do on an annual basis, like we do with our open enrollment out applications that we get, checking in with families, because I think there's some opportunities there. Remember that homeschool families can come in and take 2 classes in the public schools without being, without leaving the Homer system or network. And there were some conversations about that and the availability, but we have had situations where homeschool families have come in, taken a few classes, and then the students would like to become full-time students here as well. And then also we had some questions about athletics, and homeschool students can participate in athletics here as long as they're not, again, open enrolled out to a third party. They have to be only homeschool. And we had some good conversations around that. So, we did not connect on a couple of those families, but had left multiple messages, and we did have a few that called back after we couldn't initially contact them. The other thing, if the board, just so the board realizes too, the other thing that we learned from this process is there are a few families that have a Belleville school district address that are not currently in our system, which means that they've never filled out the child find. So we don't have contact information for them, but at least we know that they're out there. And we'll do a little bit more digging in terms of seeing if we can find a contact so that we can at least make some kind of outreach to them, because I think there was 4 families that we don't even have. They're not in our current system, even for the census.
Okay. So Nate, if the board decides not to take any action, then and let this kind of fall off the table, is there any value though to allowing this the table for the next one for the till July, or do you think we're okay just letting this kind of set to the side for now?
What I may suggest, Trevor, is if so we'll have a communication that could go out as early as tomorrow to families, letting them know that board didn't go forward with this and the reasons why, right? Not just because, but there wasn't the interest from the families that we had contact with that said that they were initially interested. And if we get feedback out of that said, hey, but you forgot about me, or, you know, this isn't accurate, or we'd really like it, then we could bring it back in July and I think still have time for those families. But if we don't hear that, I don't think you'll see the administrative team come back again with a second recommendation.
Sure. So, and then we're still on course with needing, you know, pretty much a commitment of at least 1 to 2 students to cover the cost.
Correct. Yeah. And then that would be per year, an average of 1 per year, 3 total. Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the board?
I have a question about Edmentum that you were talking about. We would have a teacher of record and they would have to keep track of the student. They just wouldn't have to come up with the lessons for them. Is that the only thing that they don't have to do?
That's true. Yeah. So for example, Mike, at let's say that we have a middle school student that is taking English language arts class on Edmentum. We have to have a teacher with a middle school ELA license to be able to give that credit. The convenience, of course, with JEDI is that's all taken care of for you. So we would have to monitor those students that might do Edmentum. What we found is when we have students that have expressed an interest in having an online course, when they actually get into that course, it does take quite a bit of discipline and sort of self-monitoring that some students don't enjoy once they get into that. A few are extremely successful. They can focus, they can set up their own schedule, others not so much. So that's why we usually, when we're using Edmentum or the Wisconsin virtual school courses, we will try 1 or 2 classes to start. If they're successful, we'll add more. But oftentimes what they'll say is, I'd rather go back into the classroom than take this now. They learn what they can and can't do, or what they like and don't like.
I also wanted the board to know that, I wasn't as familiar with the JEDI program as maybe I felt I should have been at the last meeting. But I also, CISA serves as the fiscal agent for JEDI. So we, as a board, we just see kind of their hires and resignations and that sort of thing. I did talk to a few of the districts that have JEDI, and they were pleased for the most part with JEDI. They said the communication was great for the most part. It did sound like, a few of them were probably thinking of other means for virtual classes. One was, I think it was Evansville, and they were using Ingenuity, I think is an option. So anyway, it was kind of interesting talking to the different school districts to see what they thought of JEDI. So
thanks, Marianne, for that feedback. Are there any other discussions or questions?
Edmonton, if we were to go that route, and not do JEDI? I mean, is that what would we have to sign up with them, or is that a case by case basis? How does that work?
Edmentum is a software program that we currently use. Our two biggest uses for it at this point are remedial coursework through summer school. And so, for example, Mr. Kreiderman and Mrs. Alstein's work with middle and high school students on credit recovery through Edmentum. So they're really familiar with the system and have been doing that for the past few years. Before that, Teresa Schultz as well. The other piece that we have used it for is we have used it for some special education programming for individual students because again, it has a range of courses from middle to high school. So sometimes it might be a student that we need to find an appropriate course for them at their level. And we have used it in those situations as well. And then the case manager serves as the teacher of record and can monitor the student's progress.
So would you envision this, if, let's say we had a family that, wanted to go the virtual route. We didn't go with JEDI tonight or in July. We decide against that. So would this be a case where they would sign up for individual classes, or would it be, how would that work? Because I mean, if you were mentioning like if it's an ELA class, it would have to be an ELA, certified teacher in middle school, for instance, in the example you gave. But I'm wondering, like, if we had an elementary school student, how would it be for third grade, and then there would be a third grade teacher of record?
Yeah, the elementary is certainly a much bigger push, but you saw that most of our students that had shown an interest, most of those 18 total students were at the middle and high school. There were very few that were at the elementary. I think maybe about a third of those 18 were at the elementary. I did talk to Kelsey a little bit this morning on that. That would almost be a case-by-case basis on how we might have to do that. We even talked about potentially a coach or interventionist taking some of that on and exploring that. But we'd really have to see, again, is that something that they really want to do once they get into the fall? The great part about that is, remember, our JEDI requirement would be that they'd have to stay in that for a semester because we would have invested into that and they haven't started the course. In this situation, if it was something locally that we did, whether it was Edmentum in particular, what we could do then is if they're not being successful or decide, boy, I'd rather be back in the classroom, that switch can happen very easily. I mean, within a day or two. The Wisconsin virtual school courses are ones where we do make the commitment because we are paying for those. Again, Jill, you could probably take 6th through 12th graders and get them fully enrolled in a range of Wisconsin virtual school courses. Remember, those are the same price as the individual JEDI courses. There's just not as many of them as JEDI had offered.
And again, with Edmentum, it's just a teacher of record, but it's not like it was, obviously for most of the school year, this last year and the end of the year before, where the teacher is actually interacting. They're really cool, right?
Right. Really, they are on an online program, and our teacher would just be checking in with them on their progress because they would get updates on that. There's also a pacing guide, so you can set how many days they have to complete the course, and then you can see if they're falling behind on that. They would also get grade updates. There's not a lot to correct. Every once in a while, there's a writing component that teacher of record would have to check in on.
Okay, and since there's very little interaction with the teachers, then I'm assuming you really need to have commitment by the parents to be involved with those kids, making sure that they're doing what they need to do.
Right.
I mean, it's very different from what we're familiar with virtual learning.
Right. Even last spring, when we were posting lessons asynchronously for the most part, there was still contact between our teachers and our students, whether that was small group meets or one-on-one meets or check-ins. This is really something different. This would be a student doing this on their own, and a teacher of record might check in with them once a week, something like that.
And what is the cost for Edmentum? How are
Edmentum, I don't have that right up, Jill, but that comes actually out of the summer school budget because we do use it primarily for summer school. I think the general price on that for the entire school year, when we get so many seats, is somewhere between I think it's around the $4,000 to $5,000 range.
Okay, thank you.
It had been more expensive at one point. I think we were in for about $7,000 or $8,000. And then when we said we don't need as many seats and we're thinking about dropping it, they came back and said, well, we can offer a fewer number of seats, which we still don't max out at. And that was where the lower cost came in.
Okay.
So the big thing though, takeaway though, is that we're ensuring though that there's going to be no stress or worry on the teaching staff, that they're going to have to, you know, put as much energy into, you know, a virtual student as they had in the last year.
Yeah, what I've found out really in the last, again, last week and a half in making the calls to those that had expressed interest and the homeschool parents even as well is overall a general trend that parents plan to have their students, even those that were virtual at the end of last year, parents intend to have their students back into the classrooms in the fall, particularly if the numbers stay where they're at right now. And again, everything that school staff has been told is we're anticipating 5 to 11 vaccination in the early fall, potentially September. That could be a little bit later, but wouldn't be much into the school year.
Okay. Yeah, I know the teaching staff was pretty de-energized by the end of the school year, and you know, a focus on trying to get that work-life balance back for them, I think, is going to be a big one for the next school year. Is there any other questions or discussion from the rest of the board on this topic?
Nate, I just want to thank you for the effort you put into it. I know it's a lot for you and the rest of the administrative team, and I thank you for your diligence in getting the information and presenting it to us. So appreciate it. I know it took a good deal of time.
No problem. I mean, anytime that I never think it's a waste of time when we're reaching out to parents and just seeing where they're at. And again, sometimes parents that might feel disconnected from the school district or not have a connection. I thought it was time well spent.
I would agree. I think you probably just made some connects and relationships that may be fruitful in the future. So well done.
All right, then I'll just throw this out there. Is there a motion to support the JEDI program? One last call for a motion. All right, no motion on the table for the JEDI program. So at this time, we'll set it to the side, and Nate, if we need to, we can revisit it. So I would definitely encourage, you know, sending that email out and letting the community know, but also really just kind of focusing on that it's not because the board didn't want this, it's just that we just didn't see the demand to support it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, that wraps up our last agenda item this evening. So with that said, thank you to the board for your time for this special meeting. Appreciate it. Thank you all for joining virtually. And if there's nothing else, then we will close up if the motion to close out the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, a first by Barb and a second by Ryan. Marion, if you could please, a roll call vote.
Trevor,
Yes?
Ryan,
Yes.
Barb,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Marion. Yes.
All right, all in favor? So everybody, thank you again. Have a great evening, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.